Welcome to Silicon Valley Impact, where business insight meets startup innovation. And now, please give a warm welcome to your host, Brian Sparks!
Always bringing the heat, Nick. Nick and Brian. We have Nick in the house. Nick, I feel like you should be in on this.
Oh, yeah, we should have had Nick do the intro. That would have been fun.
Yeah,
It's a team effort.
I know. So, all right, let me get into this. Welcome to Silicon Valley Impact. I'm your host, Brian Sparks. The purpose of this show is to have honest conversations about what it takes to build great businesses and communities so that you can make an impact in your own. With that being said, we have energy in the house. We have three individuals who are great minds and great people. And that's kind of a play on one of my friends, Nick Larson, who is in the house. But before we get to him and all his energy, let's welcome in Raj. Raj, good to meet you, buddy. I mean, I've been excited about this. These are one of the celebrities, I feel, that you get to meet in this industry who've done great things. And the more research I've done on you, Raj, the more I'm impressed with your history. So welcome to the show. Give a little intro about yourself and what you're doing nowadays.
Hey, Brian. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. You know, what a great place and venue and great group of people to talk with. Happy to give a quick intro. I'm an entrepreneur. I like to build new products that don't exist today and try to change the way people work, people live. My first company was called Zimride at the time, but became Lyft. And so I was very lucky to be involved with that and, back in 2007 or so. I then went to MIT for a PhD and then dropped out to start another company called Presto, which put these tablets on restaurant tables so guests could order and pay from their seats without waiting. You might have seen them in Applebee's, Chili's, those types of restaurants. And in the pandemic, we pivoted to doing voice AI for drive-thrus. So when you go to a drive-thru, you can order via AI instead of having to wait for someone to take your order. And since that company went public, I left, and then I started two new companies recently. One is Lima, which helps high-skilled immigrants come to the United States. We want to be the recruiter for the United States, bringing the best talent here to live here in this great country. And then I also started a company called Tribe, which reimagines group chats to build closer communities. So think of a modern-day WhatsApp or Telegram, just reimagined for building trust. So that's what I do. I'm married, got two kids, live nearby here, and just really enjoy a life of being a builder.
Wow. I mean, I'm blown away. I'm overwhelmed, a little bit of imposter syndrome. I mean, just to flex myself a little bit, I once put together a neighborhood softball team, and that did really well. So, I mean, we got a lot of common.
We're the same.
It's very good. We're the same. We're the same. Yeah. So
same tribe.
Didn't win a game, but hey, moving on. Nick, good to see you, buddy.
Likewise.
I know you, and I want all the listeners to get to know you. So do a little intro. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing in the communities that you're building, because you like me and like Raj got our hands in a lot of different things.
A lot of cookie jars.
A lot of cookie jars. So yeah do your little intro.
Thank you for that. Well, before we get into me, Raj saying that he's an entrepreneur and likes to build things is like Mozart saying he likes to tickle the ivory and play some piano from time to time. So very humble, Raj. So my name is Nick Larson. I grew up in Los Gatos, so Bay Area native, and have had a number of failures and a couple wins as well. As a CRO and serial founder. So the first would be a co-working space, scaled that to 12 locations, raised $15 million, ran that for 3 years, and then started a social media management platform, ran that for 3 years also, raised from Google. So got to be part of this rocket ship that we all kind of proverbially talk about. And so it's been an interesting ride, and now we're building Silicon Zombies, which was an inspiration. I'm sure we'll get into this, but with our buddy Sean.
Yeah.
So top 5% of shows on Spotify, over 100,000 views a month, and we're demystifying emerging tech, but mostly just grateful to be connected to marvelous community builders like yourself, right?
Oh, shucks, man. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. Love you, buddy.
Yeah.
We will talk a little bit more about it. I think if there's going to be a theme today, it's going to be around building communities and partnerships and why that's important, but ultimately how to build something great, right? It's the content, great people, but the context, I think, is very important, and there's a lot of experience here in the room around that. Delya, good to see you.
Hi.
Tell us a little bit about what you're working on and your background in a run-up to what you got going on.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of teed it up with partnerships. That's me. I'm the partnership girl here. Right now, co-founder and CEO of Partner Utopia. First-time founder, although I cannot imagine doing anything else for the rest of my life. This is awesome so far. And partnerships, yeah. So I'm happy to kind of dive a little bit deeper into it. There's a big part about partnerships that people either skip or forget, and that's the strategy, and that's the thinking part. Everybody gets too excited doing the actual doing part and the measuring the results, and nobody really thinks through the strategy. There are a few people out there that do that very well. I think I'm one of them. But that should be opened up to the rest of the world to be able to do that part well, because then, similar to relationships, 50% of partnerships fail, and our belief is that's due to bad strategy. So we're here to stop that.
Nice. And I love what you're doing. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about what it is that you're doing with partnerships. What does that look like on a corporate level? What does that look like for startups? And what does that look like even on a network level? Because as a first time founder, you're figuring out that networks at all level is really kind of what raises the boat in the process. And Nick, you're bobbing like a rock star right now, agreeing.
Big time.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. So we'll unpack that, and then maybe we'll get to the funny story how you and I met.
Oh yeah.
Because that's a good story always. So Raj, let's pivot back to you. What are you currently working on? I mean, you've got a long list of things that you've done, and you're currently working on something. But let's talk a little bit about this serial entrepreneur mindset first. You have done so many things, or doing so many things at once, and you're doing them well. Give us kind of a high level insight and overview of what that world looks like to you. Like, you see all these things going on, and then executing, putting them in the right frameworks, and then doing it at such a high level you do. I mean, that's a big question, but you can just kind of jump in anywhere, because I think people are wondering, how do you do what you do?
So first of all, I think it's really hard to start companies. It's really hard to create something out of nothing. Most first-time founders are really overwhelmed by just how much they have to learn, all the chaos they're dealing with. I think it's very normal, and I get a lot of questions from first-time founders about this. And the truth is, like, it doesn't get much easier, but you do get much better. So over time, I've been doing this now almost 2 decades. So the first 80 years or so, I think, was a lot of like feeling overwhelmed, feeling like this is too much. And, you're on the steep part of the learning curve, and the steep part of the learning curve in any part of life is always overwhelming. I got 2 kids now, and they're learning all these new things, and, they're learning how to bike, they're learning how to swim, and they feel overwhelmed when they're learning it. But when they're on the other side of that, they feel great. They feel confident. They feel like they can do anything. And, I think it's the same being a founder, right? Like, and unfortunately, a lot of founders give up in the first 5 to 10 years, right? Like, that is a very difficult, part of the journey. And they go do something else with their life. Maybe they become a VC, or they take a job or something like that. They're like, this founding life is too hard. But I really, even though it was difficult, I also enjoyed it. I enjoyed the challenge. So that kept me going, and it got me over that first decade, which is the most difficult part. And then now I feel like it's all familiar to me. I know what I'm doing. I know the different problems that can happen. I know how to solve those problems. I know how to leverage, capital, talent, all the different levers an entrepreneur has to build great things. And I know also where to focus, what to worry about, what not to worry about, which is a big challenge for first-time founders. They often don't know what they should be worried about. And so they're worried about everything.
I got to double click on that right there.
Yeah.
So is it the same problems, or is it you just know how to roll with the problems a little bit better?
Yeah, I know how to roll with the problems. So there's some problems that are self-inflicted, and I know how to not create those. And when they do get created, I know how to solve them. There's some problems like a pandemic, which are from an external party, or the markets are crashing, and then kind of what steps to take to deal with that. Maybe a competitor poached one of your people, or an investor backed out. These are things you've seen before. These are movies you've seen before. You know how to deal with these. Of course, you've never seen a pandemic before, but you know how to deal with some level of crisis. And, I've dealt with a lot of crises in my companies, and I think you do get better as you deal with them, and you have a level of calmness and knowing what to do, which really helps. So I think, the founder lifestyle is not easy, and it can be very tough on the founder themselves, but also their families. And I think, but with practice, everything gets better.
Let's start there, because I have a lot of questions about the buckets. And then once we kind of work through this, we'll talk about certain companies you've launched. You're talking about one bucket, the self-inflicted wound, right? I'm going to ask you, give me, kind of three that you've seen done a lot. And then there's the unknown that can kind of rise up. It's market conditions. It can just be, I didn't know I was supposed to do that with my go-to-market strategy. And then there is maybe just another bucket where there's this unexpected management of life and work and being all in, transitioning from I'm working full-time, now I'm full-time founder, making those transitions. What are some high-level expectations that first-time founders need to have in each one of those buckets?
Yeah, I think, for self-inflicted, like just giving you some examples, like it could be maybe the founder made a bad decision, about what product to build or what market to enter, or they hired the wrong person, or, they didn't raise enough capital, they raised too much capital. Like these are things that happen as a result of bad founder decisions. And, but if you're experienced enough and you're kind of, I would say, reflective enough, self-aware enough of what you've done wrong, you're able to adjust and quickly make adjustments. So hire the wrong person, okay, find a way to, part with that person or find another person that's better and learn from what you did wrong. I mean, an experienced founder would do it faster, and do it with less sort of like anxiety and beating themselves over. They're like, yeah, it happens, just move on, right? Similar with many of these types of self-inflicted wounds, they happen at all levels of experience, but the experienced founders react faster. They address the problem, and they don't beat themselves over it, and their team doesn't beat themselves over it too, because they have this attitude of like, yeah, this is just part of it,
I left hanging there two other buckets, but I want to go back to this the team piece.
Yeah.
A lot of first-time founders think, oh, it's just about the money. If I get the money, then I can execute. Now, aside from the money, what is probably the two most important things to focus on? Because you talked a lot about, hey, I know what to focus on, so that you're not self-inflicting certain wounds.
Yeah, I think that is one of the biggest kind of mistakes first-time founders make, is that they think the whole goal is to get capital, and like the capital is going to solve a lot of the problems. And I think experienced founders realize that capital is actually a pretty minor thing, and it's probably because experienced founders are also much better at attracting capital, but it's also because they realize that if you can solve a few key problems that are not related to capital, the capital will come. Capital is kind of a dependent variable, not an independent variable. It comes as a result of other actions, and it may or may not be necessary. So there's a level of confidence around capital that more experienced founders will get. And I think experienced founders focus more on talent, because they realize having good talent can like solve a lot of problems in one go. And they also focus more on product and how products fit into markets. So all levels of founders are often very good at product and understanding the product, but how products slot into a market and how the market is adopting it, and how the market is experiencing it, is something that I think more experienced founders get better at, in terms of like, how does the market absorb the product, and how are they getting the most benefit out of it.
Yeah. And Nick, something there interests you.
I think it's fascinating you brought that up, because a lot of founders, they're hyper focused on that, like raising the check. And sure, it's a good signal to the market, but to me, it's almost like a shortcut. Like if you want to build the best solution, you got to attract the best people. And if you can't tell the story effectively to do that, a shortcut or a heuristic would be just like throw money at it. But to me, that doesn't put like a solid foundation in place. Like, what did you maybe share a story with us, Raj, about when you were first building Lyft and how you attracted the A players, kind of like Peter Thiel and Elon and Matt Schlechkin and David Sachs and the rest of the PayPal mafia. I mean, that was like a core group of rock stars. Tell us about your core group of rock stars.
Yeah. So I think, in the beginning, when you're a young founder, you're just trying to get anyone to invest. You're not really looking to, or anyone to join. You're not really looking at getting, rock stars. The rock stars are evidence in hindsight, or are evident in hindsight, but in the beginning, nobody knows. Like when they joined to form PayPal, nobody knew they were rock stars, right? And I would say still, I mean, the Lyft and Presto ecosystem has a lot of great talented people who are going on to do big things now, and their names will become, more and more prevalent. So, I know a lot of them have invested in some of their companies of, I'm boosting a lot of that talent up. So every, successful company or every company that's been through a journey produces talent that can do great things in the future. So that's one of the great things about Silicon Valley is like all this great talent that comes out of these companies.
Delya, you had a question, but to Nick's point, what I've really looked towards what Ray Dalio says in terms of talent. You got to look for somebody who's hungry, humble, and smart. And the people who have come through these doors, and Raj, you included, and Dan that we had on here last week, and a number of other people, you almost have to like draw out the genius because they're so humble. And I asked kind of a complex question. I realized as I was processing it and saying it and asking you, Raj, you just immediately put it into context and answered it. So I think those three character qualities are kind of like those high levels, what you look for. It's like, are they open to growth? Can you integrate their idea into the team? Are they hungry and passionate? And then ultimately, in hindsight, they become the all-stars, the rock stars in hindsight. But yeah, I don't think you see it in the moment. You just have to look for the clues. But Delya, you had something that was kind of top of mind for you.
Just thank you for saying it, because when we were putting our company together, funding was not even on the list, honestly. Like now that I think about it, we never even discussed it. We discussed two things. One is we attracted people to come work for us, quit their jobs, quit everything that they're doing because they believed in what we were building. And two, we knew the customers were just lining up, right? So we kept focusing, and we still focus on that. The only reason why we started funding is we have an opportunity to accelerate a couple parts of the product. But yeah, I mean, talent is so important, and it's a good way to know that we have good talent is we actually just wrapped up. We had an offshoring company, which was great. They were awesome. They did what they have to do. But we ended up building an internal team in US, you can imagine, in AI. You can imagine how expensive that is. And that is cheaper than offshoring because these guys are coming in, believing in what we're doing. So just so glad to hear you say that, because sometimes I question myself, like, should I be thinking about funding more? But yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, all my friends are doing it. Should I be doing it too? So
well, that's a big problem because funding gets a lot of visibility, right? Funding announcements get on LinkedIn posts, they get on press, and it becomes a bragging rights issue, right? That's one of the most, I think, odious elements of funding is that like it kind of feeds on itself, and it's seen as a very visible marker of success. Your revenue numbers, your talents, happiness at work, your product's success and getting adopted. These are not public metrics, so founders don't boast about them, and they don't feel like they have a level of status or a level of pride around them publicly. So it does affect people's calculus. I mean, we're human beings. We like to show status. Markers of status.
What about Glassdoor? I mean, don't they kind of capture some of these data points internally?
Yeah, I mean, Glassdoor captures probably unhappy employees, what they're saying, but no one's posting Glassdoor on like their LinkedIn, right? Like Glassdoor reviews and stuff. It's not something that people, you can't tell your family necessarily about a Glassdoor review, but you will tell them about the funding you raised, and it seems like a big number, so people feel good about it, so. That's a big problem with funding, and it leads to too many founders chasing big dollars, thinking too much about funding. So as an experienced founder this time, I actually, both my companies started without raising funding, and and it's gone much better in many ways because the team is very focused on user happiness and product quality, which are the key metrics for any company.
But what about founders that are not, they don't have several unicorns in their in their track record?
There's still ways to make a lot of progress with very little capital, and because if you don't have, if you have less of an overhead, you can actually get a lot of stuff done, and there's ways to get money from customers if you're developing something great. You can sign deals with customers before you've even built anything, and say, hey, I'll do this, but I need your commitment on this. And if you're building a good enough product, people will do that, and if you're a good enough salesperson, people will do that. And founders need to develop those skills anyway, so why not now?
So speed matters then at that point, right? Your strategy and speed matters. Where's the crossroads between having the experience and being able to accelerate and be resourceful, be strategic, but yet if you're a first-time founder, you don't have that skill set or that resource? What is like one nugget so that a founder could back off focusing so much on fundraising and focus more on product and delivery?
Yeah, so the first thing a founder should ever do before they start a company is talk to customers and talk to users. And they can do that without leaving their job, without making a big sacrifice. They can call a bunch of customers. I did this at both Lyft and Presto. We talked to a bunch of users, and I even like did some carpooling, with Lyft back in the day, and I waited tables for Presto. Like I wanted to learn those industries before I jumped in head first, and just understand, is there a problem here? And who's going to be willing to pay for it?
Mm-hmm. It's almost like a unique take on Secret Boss. Did you ever see that?
Yeah,
TV show?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a founder, secret founder, whatever. Right.
Right.
Yeah, gotta have that moment.
Yeah.
We got to pitch that to Mark Cuban or something.
Exactly. Yeah. Secret founder. Yeah.
So Raj, go back. I just geek off, and then of course Nick, chime in at any point because I'll keep going back down the rabbit hole.
This is good stuff.
Of how a founder is made. So how did you get into all this, Raj? Did you have a family that was entrepreneurs? Did you have a mentor? What was that moment that you said, I'm going to open a lemonade stand, I'm going to start Lyft? But it wasn't Lyft at the time.
Yeah.
What was kind of that moment you realized, I'm going to go this route?
Yeah, and my story is a bit different from many folks. I didn't have any business. I didn't even have a job till I was in college. So I had no work experience, no real life experience at all, and I was pretty much focused on academics, my whole schooling life, and that's kind of what my family. I have a traditional kind of Indian family, had to be a doctor, and was kind of focusing on that path, getting good grades, really, and I think my eyes kind of really opened up when I had a great professor in college, where I went to undergrad at University of Waterloo. And I had a great economics professor who kind of told the stories of companies being built and the impact they could have. And that got me excited. That got me more excited than, doing the next physics assignment or something.
So this makes a little bit more sense to me.
Yeah.
Just when you mentioned MIT, like Ivy League, traditionally kind of very technically inclined. But as I understand it, the resilience is not a trait that you typically associate with Ivy Leagues. And obviously resilience is so important because you can just keep getting slapped in the face every day as a founder, and you gotta just wake up and rise and grind and pull it all together. But it sounds like your undergrad was at University of Waterloo. What was that experience like for you? Yeah,
well, University of Waterloo was a formative experience for me for sure. It's a co-op program, so you study for 4 months and you work for 4 months, and you study for 4 months and you work for 4 months, and you do that for almost 5 years. So by the time you graduate from your undergrad, you would have worked at 6 different companies, and so I really compensated for that, for that not having a job till since college, and I kind of learned who I was through that process because I worked at small companies, I worked at big companies, I worked with good bosses, I worked with bad bosses. I realized I had a problem with authority in general. So
a rebel.
I realized I had that issue with me, and I also realized I liked environments that were very open, like where I could do whatever I wanted. And if I could do whatever I wanted, I would do a lot of stuff. But if I was told what to do, I would just rebel. So I learned that about myself.
Brian, you mentioned something before about the importance of creating community. I had a coffee not too long ago with Mercedes Bankston of Founders Institute, and she said something that really resonated. She said, first-time founders, they focus on the product. The second-time founders, they focus on the customer, and the third-time founders, they focus on the community, which to me feels like you can host events, you can get more people excited. It's almost like a vehicle to solve problems and tell stories and bring people together in a compelling way. As a rock star in this space for building partnerships, Delya, what have you seen?
So partnerships are separate, right? Let me just kind of answer that question and also double click on what you said earlier as far as first time founder. I'm between 2 and 3 right now, as far as focusing on the users and focusing on the communities. And what we did is when I realized that, yes, there was a problem and yes, I had an idea, I'm like, okay, so there's the solution to the problem. Before I decided to leave my job, my very corporate, cozy, lazy paying job. I went and talked to a lot of people. I said, hey guys, like, this is the problem. Yeah. If I give you the solution, would you pay for it? Yeah. But then my co-founder was like, hey, I want to come with you. I'm like, okay, but you're also going to leave, 2 kids, wife doesn't work. Like, I'm not going to take this responsibility. So I did something in addition to me talking to them, because I had an idea. I had him talk to the users. Until this day, we still host about 10 user interviews, and I'm not on any of them. He's doing it. And then he comes back and then he kind of shows it to us. We just did a very complicated one with one of the really big CRM companies, where he went and interviewed a few people in their strategies to try to find out how they solve this problem. And then he presented it to me. I was like, it's exactly what we're building.
Wow.
So we separate the two, right? So definitely you talk to the users, but then if you have a co-founder, especially if that co-founder is not an expert in what you're building, right? It's just in your head. Remove yourself, have that person talk to them, and then have him talk to you back, because you will just remove a lot of the bias. The community is important, because the second reason why we decided to start it is that there was a community now being formed around people like me, partnership managers and partnership professionals. And we are building this product for them. And when we message that, like, this is for you, we want you to have something that you don't need IT approval and you don't need this, because we want you to excel at your job, it changes the whole narrative, right? I'm no longer selling, I'm enabling a community. And it's just becoming a very different one. So I'm glad you mentioned it, because I didn't really realize the third one was even a tactic, right? And now I know, I'm like, we're right in between the two.
So I gotta go back, and of course you and I have talked about the difference between B2B and B2C in that decision. But Rod, real quick, you mentioned Waterloo. That's Canada, right?
Yeah.
So we've had a lot of great founders, great VCs come through here who are immigrants, and their story almost gives them the resilience to be great at what they do. Was there a pathway? Because I'm also thinking you have a company now that focuses on immigrants. Was there a story that you and the family had to go through Canada that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, go to Canada, then you came here, and now you are holding to that experience and giving back to your own, almost your same pathway? Am I hearing that?
Yeah, definitely. So I was born in Canada. I'm born in Toronto, but my parents immigrated there from India. And, my dad was the only one in his family in India to leave India. So definitely our story is one of immigrants. I came to the U.S. For MIT, and then I ended up dropping out to start this company. And I had a really tough time getting a visa. Actually, the U.S. immigration system does not favor entrepreneurs. It actually makes it very difficult for entrepreneurs to start companies in the U.S. So I was denied for a couple different visas. I was very uncertain about my pathway. I remember being yelled at the border for a couple different times, treated as if I was a criminal, basically, for even trying to come to the U.S.
Wow.
So
that's so backwards.
Yeah, it was a very difficult experience for me. I eventually figured out a path. I actually built my networks. I met with people from the White House. I met with people, industry leaders, and luckily there are enough immigration allies out there in the U.S. to support, eventually supported me to getting a visa and a green card. And today I'm a U.S. citizen. And so is my whole family. My kids are born here. My wife is an immigrant from China. She's also a U.S. citizen now. So we're very proud U.S. citizens. But it was a difficult journey to get here. And as a CEO, I was CEO for almost 15 years. And I saw a lot of employees struggling with the exact same issue. And they just want to contribute to the U.S. They want to stay here, build their lives, build their families, pay taxes in the U.S. And we make it so difficult for them. And for me, it's just a travesty. And I know that there was a big movement to make the laws, better for high-skilled talent, but that movement has died. And a lot of people, as part of the movement, think that the movement will never come back again. So what I said was, well, I can't let this happen. So I'm going to start a company that I hope will become the talent arm of the United States. So the company that's responsible for bringing the best talent to the United States and making their lives easier, so they can set up their lives and their families here, so that we can all benefit from their skills and their hard work. And today in the U.S. government, there's no one's job, not a single person's job, to bring in good talent. You think that as a government, someone would be thinking about this. It's actually not the case. And there should be like a department. Like my company had a department of talent, but the U.S. government does not. So I'm like, well, if the U.S. government isn't going to solve this problem, I think the private sector should solve it. So that's why I started.
So you're scouting top talent.
Yes.
Amen.
Yeah.
I want to do a quick shout out to Nitin Pachisia. of Unshackled Ventures.
Yes, I know.
I think you also know him. So great storyteller and great community builder. And what he does is he helps these founders that are coming to the U.S. with that visa process. And I think that's just a beautiful way to kind of drive value at every level.
Absolutely.
Well, you had a chance to meet Kate from Career Pathway Institute.
She says hi. I was on the phone with her this morning.
Yeah,
actually.
great team. They focus, not only positioning immigrants who are coming over and dealing with their visas, but they focus also on their spouse and what they're able to do and can't do, because that's kind of the forgotten individual, right? So there's a lot of attention going on this, at least in this ecosystem.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of spouses who are unable to work, you know, and it's again, these people want to contribute to the economy and pay taxes, and we're not letting them. So there's a lot of things that don't make sense about immigration. There's a lot of tough stories, even in the high skilled immigration space. Families separated. So I've seen a lot of them firsthand now, and I've also seen a lot of them get to the other side and be approved and change their lives. So that's also very gratifying and meaningful to me as someone who wants to have impact.
That's incredible. Okay, let's Brian, I'm looking at you. You think it's time to take a little short break and then
We're
bring it
at
back?
that time, which is astounding to me because
It goes so quick.
It goes so quick,
Let's do it.
especially when
All right.
people are so interesting.
All right, so we're back. We're here with Raj, Nick, and Delya. Nick, I want to pivot to you a little bit. I mean, Raj, I feel like you and I all of us could go down the rabbit hole of your experience, and of course, we'll come back to you as the show moves on. But Nick, let's look to you for a little bit. Number one, you've got a lot of things going on. Walk us through kind of what you are up to nowadays with Silicon Valley, bringing together this community. In fact, you got another project coming up. You're going to be doing the Longevity Summit. Talk a little bit about that and how you're bringing everything you are doing together that gives you purpose and meaning, and really is bringing a lot of value to people.
Wow, thank you. That's a great tee up. You know, I have you ever seen that movie? It's a Wonderful Life. It's an old black and white film.
Yeah, classic.
So the general premise is that there's a banker, and he's very loose with the community. Like if they can't necessarily afford a loan, but he knows that they're good people, he'll give it to them. And he's done this over time, so he's built up social capital. And of course, there's his arch nemesis, which is this guy. I think his name's Arthur Bailey, or maybe he's a protagonist. Regardless, this guy tries to come in and take his bank, and he almost strong arms him. And the protagonist almost loses his bank, but then the whole community comes together and chips in and kicks this guy out of town and saves. You know, it was a happy ending. And I think that's kind of how our first summit has gone. So we've been running Zombies for almost 4 years. This is our first summit. A little daunting, 300-400 people. But the amount of individuals that have come in to support, either through visibility, like through Buzzable with Hassam, or Arnie with ticketing, or Sahava with visibility and bringing in VCs, because the whole point is living longer, happier, healthier on October 11th at the Ameswell Hotel, at this all-day summit with live music and all the rest. So it's been a very like boots on the ground, like you're on the court playing the game. But I'm also very conscious and appreciative of the number of people that have come in to make this thing a reality. And I mean, we could unpack all these different people, but it fills my heart with gratitude. And I know physiologically speaking, if we stay in a space of gratitude, it's good for everything. Along the lines with good sleep.
So what you're saying is George Bailey is your mentor in this situation right now.
Sure, we
Yeah.
can say that.
So talk a little bit about why this mindset of community, because that's really how you and I met years ago. I think it was that community of talk on Clubhouse that we kind of kicked off, and you and I have stayed pretty consistent. You more so with Silicon Zombies, because it started as Silicon Zombies. It's still Silicon Zombies. And you really have immersed yourself into this sense of community. So first of all, talk a little bit about Silicon Zombies, what they're doing, and then talk a little bit about, what other ways are you engaging with this community?
Well, before we dive into that, I want to recognize and honor and appreciate like what you're building. So you have this fantastic culture, and I see it because you host incredible events. In fact, that's where I met Kate, so thank you for that. It plug and play. But when you get a great culture, that informs the tribe, And the tribe always rolls up to the head of the tribe, like the leader or the chief. And you know, that's you. So I've seen what you've built consistently. And, you know, it's funny because when we had originally started on Clubhouse, it was you, me, Sean, and I think 6 or 7 other guys and gals. And we all did 1 hour per week on Clubhouse. And that was super fun and kind of gave us an opportunity to dip our toes in the water on content creation, which I feel is fundamentally replacing traditional advertising. Mm-hmm. You got to make people laugh and learn if they're going to give you their attention. And also, as an ancillary, creating content is becoming much easier through improved tech and connectivity and distribution and all the rest. So, you know, getting back to what we're doing at Zombies is the first 6 months or so, you and I and Sean stayed consistent. Almost everybody else fell off. So the lesson there is the importance of consistency. And I think that's because people know what to expect, but also people can come back and follow your journey and see how you've progressed. So we've gone from Clubhouse to LinkedIn Audio, which is their competitive product, and now onto LinkedIn Live. A couple of years ago, 4 years ago, if you told me I was going to be doing 2, sometimes 3 shows in front of 150 people live, I would be, well, you're positively out of your mind. But, you know, you take one step and you become more comfortable, and just like a muscle, it becomes to get better. So I think staying in this place of consistent value creation and making sure that your values are consistent, it means you're going to stay in alignment, and people get attracted to that. And so there's like a natural momentum that I've seen you be able to bring forward, and that's why I'm excited to collaborate with you on October 11th, where we're going to bring, you know, folks like Dr. Aubrey de Grey and Bianca Valenti. Bianca's the biggest. She's the #1 big wave rider in the world. I just got back from a surf trip with her in Fiji a couple months ago. Awesome lady. So that's I hope that kind of answers a little bit of that.
So it's focusing on longevity. Why longevity for you?
As a surfer, it means very much to me. And like, I'm almost 40, so like, where did the last 10 years go? I don't know. But I know that it's important to me personally. I also recognize that it's important if I look at the last 12, 18 months of shows on Zombies, over 30% of them have been health focused. I think that is partially because the pandemic caused us to reflect on our own mortality and also to want to better understand physiologically what's happening in our bodies. But not just understand, but also take agency. What are the things that we can do to take better care of our bodies so our bodies take better care of ourselves? You can't have an enjoyable life unless you have health. So that's why I think it's so important to understand what's just around the corner, like the kind of cutting edge biotech innovations, of which there are many, especially if you look at what's happening with DeepMind and decoding the human genome and making that open source. A lot of companies can build on top of that. I think that there's a natural momentum once you start to get going.
I love that. Actually, you and I have had many beers together and hung out. I don't know if we've ever sat and had a conversation about longevity, but the passion that I'm hearing from you is really interesting. And I'm going to kick this around the room as well, because I think there's a unique way nowadays, as you're saying, about how to build a brand, and at the same time, how to build your authority. And you touched on that, but Delya, you had something that kind of caught your ear.
Yeah, I mean, this might be just one example, but I'm hoping it's going to repeat over and over again. The community I mentioned earlier for partnership people, it's called Partnership Leaders. They put an event together once a year. It's in your community. And it's a typical trade show at the end of the day, right? So trade show comes with lots of parties, lots of late nights and all of that. They decided to put a stop to that, and they said this is going to be health focused. So they got this one guy doing a 5K run on one of the mornings, and I volunteered to do yoga. And then it just followed, right? There was another lady who was professional in breath work. The other one was doing a sound bath. So we all got together and basically throughout the event hosted these mini breaks, right? And avoided the typical kind of drinking boondoggle that happens during these shows. And it was awesome because I had my engineers running around. They're like, what? I'm like, guys, you got it, right? You got the customers, you got everything else. I'm going to go teach a yoga class. And everybody was a little bit weirded out by it, but then I had over 100 people show up to the class, and it was pretty cool.
Where do you think the science ends and the woo-woo begins around sound baths?
I can't speak to that. I'm not a sound bath professional.
There's probably a
Yes.
lot that we're just kind of like scraping the surface.
It just feels really good.
Yeah.
I suggest you to try it. I'm actually talking to that lady right now to try to see how can we expand it. There's another guy I got in contact with called Quantum Harmonics to just see how we can distribute. There's a lot about sound and what it does to your brain waves and the healing aspect of it. That's all I can tell you.
And plants as well. Oh, that's
Thank you.
awesome.
Thank you, Brian. Perfect.
Feeling better already.
Yeah.
Sandra and I invested in a company called Agrosonics last year that uses these sound waves, like through small speakers, to make plants grow faster, which is kind of like an interesting idea.
Does it work on hair?
And for our listeners, the Stanford School, the business school at Stanford, one of the most popular classes is called Touchy Feely. So the question that you ask is like, where does the science end and the woo-woo begin? I think is a tough task a lot of times to get to the market, to people who may not know they need what you're suggesting. So that's a topic in itself. But I kind of want to pivot it to Raj. You've built some great companies around great marketing and brand development. What has been some of your strategies? I mean, you've got a podcast. You've been out there, customer facing, creating an authority as well as a brand. Where's the line, and what are some of the insights in order to build this community and this attention?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the key about branding is just distilling your brand down to its core essence. And what does that mean? Either your number one value proposition to your customer, or your core differentiator from with a competitor. And Lyft has done a really good job of differentiating from Uber. Had a much more friendly brand, and they had the pink mustache back in the day. I think John Zimmer there is very good at marketing, and he knew how to distill the Lyft brand down to a real contrast with Uber. Uber was this cold black, kind of like sleek brand, and Lyft was like a pink, warm, we're your friends, we can trust us, contrast, almost the exact opposite as Uber, right? So, and that worked really well when Uber kind of got itself into trouble. And so in a consumer perspective, I think Lyft has done a really good job. And, there's other types of consumer brands out there. Right now we're working on Tribe, which which is reimagining group chat. Think about a pro WhatsApp, a group chat is really focused on building trust, building community. It's called Tribe because, we just used the word tribe earlier in the podcast. We're trying to build a close community of people that you feel that you have a kinship with. And so that it's in the name, from that perspective.
I'm very curious, and have been since Raj walked into the room. Can you give us some details on how you're able to do that through a group chat? I'm having trouble wrapping my mind around how a group chat sort of elevates up onto that level.
Yeah, so many group chats are people you already know, right? Friends, family, people you already know. You're just chatting together on iMessage or whatever. But I think increasingly group chats are going to draw people together who don't really know each other well. So maybe you're talking about basketball, or you're talking about being a tech founder, or you're just talking about how much you love this podcast. And you're bringing people who don't know each other together in a room. And if you bring them together on WhatsApp, you don't really know who they are. There's phone numbers, right? And so you lose a lot of that connection. And what Tribe does is really focus on building trust. So you actually can see beautiful profiles of people who join, Tribe and get to see who you're talking to. And
but trust is based on history, and if you're meeting somebody for the first time, there's no history. So how do you reconcile that?
Yes, so I think group chats are really good at doing that because you can build that history over time. I think a good group chat is like a permanent dinner party on your phone, and over a period of time, you see these people over and over again commenting. You see their names, you know their backgrounds, you build trust with them over the period of time. And I have met a lot of great people on group chats who I never knew and would have never gotten to know if it wasn't for the group chat. And some of those people are business collaborators today. Some of them are close friends because you just see them over and over again. Think of like a campus, a university, college campus. In college campuses, you would often see people just walking around, and maybe you didn't really sit down with them and do like a dedicated one-on-one, but you saw them, and that built trust because I saw the same person over and over again. And later you'll consider them a friend. You'll consider them an old friend, later in life. And just because you saw them once in a while, or you had one or two shared experiences with them. So the consistency over time, I think, really helps in group chats. I think group chats could be executed a lot better, and we're doing things like event coordination. Can a group chat help to facilitate more in-person events? I think the current platforms don't do that very well. Can the group chats encourage more debates and encourage link sharing and even integrate with some of the social platforms like Twitter and stuff? Some of them, some of the conversations I've had on group chats are way more intimate because people don't feel like they need to perform, in a public environment. You can be yourself in a group chat because it's not a public conversation. And so I enjoy that format as well. I think
I hear you talking about using Twitter or other social media platforms to initiate these conversations.
Yes.
I'm waiting for a company, it could be yours, Raj, where they figure out how to start group chats or conversations or some sort of bigger experience from the comment sections. I can't tell you how many times I've randomly been scrolling through TikTok and I can't wait to get the comment section and hear the funny things that people are saying. And from there,
yes, you're right.
Right, there could be some sort of mechanism in place where a conversation begins.
Yeah. And a lot of those conversations end up nowhere. You see 2 or 3 comments and they don't go anywhere. But there actually could be full-blown conversations with great people,
Yeah.
And I agree. I think the internet has not solved this problem yet.
Yeah, there's an opportunity there. Delia, I want to pivot to you really quick. I want you to tell us a little bit more about what you're working on. You've mentioned a lot of experience you have with partnerships. Talk a little bit about Partner Utopia and what you're working on, where you're at now, and where you see this going. What problem are you solving? And you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but let's talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah, I'm actually going to bring a couple of points of the conversations together. One thing I want to give an example, using Lyft, if you don't mind, Raj, of what is a partnership between 2 tech companies, right? And why does that happen? This is $300 billion industry of added revenue when 2 companies partner together. A good example, my favorite example, is Lyft partnering with Delta SkyMiles, because I'm a Delta user. So imagine how that happened, right? I wasn't in the room, obviously, when this was happening, but probably it went something like this, right? Hey, Lyft, we need more customers. We need to secure existing customers. We're trying to get out of the competition. We want more customers. What they looked at the customer final problem that the customer is trying to solve, which is not to get a lift. The final problem is I got to get somewhere, right? Then they took the get somewhere using flights. So when a purchasing decision happens that you have to get somewhere and you need to use an airplane to get there, you first buy the ticket, right? Nobody thinks, how am I going to get to the airport and then from the airport to another place? The first thing you do is you're going to buy an airplane ticket. Now, Lyft, being smart that they are, they realize that if that's the first decision, we come next, right? Then you think about how you're going to get there. So them partnering with Alaska and with Delta is representing that strategic partnership of to say that, hey, if we partner with them, by the time you've bought a Delta ticket or Alaska ticket, why wouldn't you use Lyft? Because you get more rewards from that. So that's what I mean about technology partnerships, right? I've been doing this specifically in the SaaS cloud kind of storage space for over 15 years. And I realized that similar to actually relationships, 50% of these partnerships fail, right? And everybody just lives in that world. Like, it's okay for 50% to fail. Well, that $300 billion of added revenue could be $600 billion if you do the math, right? Like, why do 50% of them fail? I experienced it firsthand. I made a lot of mistakes making it, failing partnerships. And eventually I realized that I, particularly along with a few other people, had very specific formulas of how to make sure that they don't fail. Because they really fail, just like a personal relationship, for 3 major reasons. You picked the wrong partner, you made a wrong bet, you took too long to develop that partnership, and you didn't get the most out of the partnerships. So they just kind of phase out or they fail. But in B2B, they fail in the most expensive way possible. So I got together with just a group of people like, hey, if I have these formulas, how to prevent them from failing and therefore make them more successful. The problem with these formulas is that they still take a long time to solve because you're doing it by hand. Then I went and talked to 300 other people, like, how are you guys doing this? Like, all by hand. It's a nightmare. So I'm like, if I give you a button, would this make everybody's life easier? They're like, absolutely. And that's when I called my co-founders. I'm like, hey, if I gave you formulas and I continue to perfect these formulas, can you guys build me a button? They said yes. With today's technology, like 3-4 years ago, probably would be very, very expensive, which is why another reason why we never discuss funding as a primary, like we're only going to start if we have funding, is because building this product right now with the latest open source AI tools and ML is actually very affordable. So that's how we got together. So we basically launched the world's first SaaS product for partnership managers that addresses the strategy part. So you don't skip the strategy. You put a lot of effort into the strategy. It's a very complicated part of the partnership, so that you have a better partnership and less chances of it failing, more chances to succeed. So that's what we're doing.
Nice.
Yeah,
go ahead, Nick.
So I was going to say, Delya, I really like how you stayed close to the customer experience, and frankly, you doing hundreds of questions speaks to that, and it dovetails into your example of Lyft and United, right? Delta, excuse me. And so they were staying very close to the customer experience. I've got a friend, Jasper Sohn of goodtime.io. He runs in San Francisco, and when he hires somebody on his team for the first 3 months, they're actually working on site at one of their biggest customers. So reason being is when they come back to report on what that experience is like, you're not guessing on product roadmap. It's like a co-created thing. And of course, this means that the churn is going to decrease, the LTV will increase, but you're creating like this close bond, this close customer relationship that I think is really important. And of course, you're going to get a lot of referrals via this way as well. It also helps to, like you three, be very compelling and warm and competent. I think these are the foundations of charisma. So like these things in conjunction can have a really big impact in figuring out what are we going to build next and for who and why are we doing it and how are we going to communicate it.
Mm-hmm. I like that. So Raj, in all your years of experience with your companies, has partnerships been a big strategy for you guys?
I think they become a big part of the strategy at a certain point. I think early on, tech companies can be distracted by partnerships when they should be focused on product, I think, because they're often too nascent to partner. And I think, so in the beginning, a founder is really just looking to solve a problem. And we had to, for Presto, we had to partner with POS companies, point of sale companies, to integrate our tablet with that point of sale. And they didn't want to partner with us because we were too small. But we had to partner with them to exist, because otherwise, an order and payment could not be sent to a point of sale company. And so I have a lot of stories, probably more than we have time for.
Yeah, we have about 5 minutes left to go.
Yeah.
So Delya, to Raj's point, what is kind of your timing for your ideal customer? When do you approach them with what you are offering up?
It's a product-led growth, so we just kind of put it out there. The MVP's there. We're going to keep adding to it. But to your point, we thought that the market would attract larger companies. We're starting to see more and more startups coming to us. We're starting to see startups that their third or the fourth hire is a very sassy partnership person. And that's because they're building a product that is dependent on other solutions, right? They do one thing well, but they need 10 different things in order to complete the final problem. And the startups that are approaching it that way are actually succeeding it quite a bit. Now, we design our product specifically for sometimes for startups to say that partnership is not it, right? The product is designed so well, so objectively, that when you go through a process of trying to figure out what is your strategy, it may very well tell you, don't do partnerships. It's just going to be a waste of time and money. But we're starting to see a shift right now. So the size of the company and where they're at is actually all over the place. Like, it could be on day 1, it could be on day 100, it could be way down. So it's falling all over the place. There's not like one particular reason. The consistency that we're seeing right now is the type of problems that need to be solved is at the strategy level of who should I, and if I should, who, and how do I do this in the most efficient way? And again, that's anywhere from startups to very large organizations.
Such a fascinating topic. We're going to start to wrap up, but before we kind of start letting everyone go, Delya, how can people learn more about Partner Utopia and connect with you to learn a little bit more?
Yeah, partnerutopia.com. We have a free trial. You can just contact us through the form, and me, Delya Jansen, Jansen on LinkedIn. Just contact us, especially if you want partnerships or need any help.
All right, great. And Nick, reel it in, buddy. I know
I'm having too much fun right now.
You're
Trying to get good content.
All right, Nick, some parting words from you. Importance of community and how can people connect with you?
Yeah, just consistency and alignment on values. So just exactly what you three are doing. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Super active, and love being leading with value and passionate about surfing and music and technology. So please reach out if I can be helpful.
And how can people learn a little bit more about the Longevity Summit?
That's siliconzombies.com/ageless evolution. And it's on October 11th. So excited to see you all there.
All right, buddy. And Raj, man, I feel like I could talk to you all day. You're just a wealth of experience and knowledge. High level in terms of being a founder, what are some words of wisdom from you? And as we go out with 2 minutes left. Yeah, thanks, Brian.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. This has been great. Really enjoyed it. And, this is a, very inquisitive and, wise group of people. So I appreciate
high praise.
Yeah.
Brian just gave us 3 more minutes to talk to you.
Yeah. You got an extension.
Mission accomplished, right? Yes. Words of wisdom, I mean, just do what you enjoy. I really think that it boils down to that, because if you do what you enjoy, you'll get through that initial difficult part and you'll get to the other side. So that's my shortest words of wisdom.
How can people connect with you if so be it you want them to connect with you?
Yeah, sure. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter. Rajat Suri is my handle. And I have a podcast too called Founders in Arms. We just sit down with a bunch of other founders talking about building companies. Imad Akund, the CEO of Mercury, is my co-host, and we really enjoy that podcast. My immigration company, Lima, is limadream.com. And, Tribe is still coming out. It's still very new, but it's Tribe Chat Pro on the App Store.
Oh, nice. All right. My buddy over there, Ben Kromnick at Mercury. So we have that in common. All right, Brian, how we doing? That's about it, right? That's a wrap.
I think it was a great conversation, as always. We can wrap it up, Brian.
All right. That's a wrap. I want to thank you all for listening to Silicon Valley Impact. You can join us here every Tuesday from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Make sure to follow us on Instagram. You can find me, Brian Sparks, or Silicon Valley Impact. We'll see you all next week.